Did you know that you get to consciously choose your life, how you want to design your life? Now, that may seem really obvious that, yes, of course, you're choosing, but I want you to really think about it. Have you actually consciously chosen everything that is in your life right now? And is that working out for you? The reason I ask is because today you're going to be in a conversation with me and Sarah. And Sarah O'Brien Hammond, who is my guest today, shifted her world, her whole life from the doing, the hustle, the grind, the working on the life that she thought she should be living, or the life that seemed on paper to be the success that she wanted. And then everything turned around for Sarah, and she shifted to consciously choosing the life she was designing and creating. And this is the opportunity in this episode today, is to be really questioning, like, am I consciously making all of these choices that are what I actually want? Are they connected to my values? Are they connected to my heart and my body? There's so much in today's episode, and I want you to stay like really curious about yourself throughout this episode. And let me just say this. Let's leave judgment out of this magic space. I know that Sarah would agree with me here, because creating safe and judgment-free containers for women to gather and talk about the things that really matter, those things that aren't necessarily talked about in mainstream conversations, this is one of the core things that is what Sarah is consciously choosing to create in her work. So Sarah is the CEO of the Now LLC. As a coach, community creator, and a recruiter, Sarah's mission is to support women in living a conscious life of their design, a life that is peaceful, happy, joyful, easeful. And Sarah does that through her one-on-one coaching, group coaching, retreats, and her global women's community, the Network of Women. She's also passionate about ditching what we think we should be doing, this hustle and grind, and actually finding what works for you. So imagine this. Within the next hour, you could start to make some new conscious choices for yourself. You could find what works for you. You could choose to consciously create the life of your design. That is what our special guest in this episode of You Are the Magic is offering to us all. So breathe it in, my magic maker friend, and let's go hang out with Sarah. Welcome to You Are the Magic, the podcast that is supporting women across the world to claim their magic within. I am your host, Deb D, and it's my absolute delight to share with you some of the amazing women that I know who are living big lives and making magic happen. They will be inspiration for you. I'm also going to be sharing with you some solo episodes with a little bit more about my story, the magic that I'm activating, and how you too can ignite and activate the magic within you. Because I believe it to be true. I do believe that you are the magic. And I do believe that it's time for women to reclaim our magic, our intuitive leadership, and our unique gifts and talents, so that we can be the wave of change that we know the world needs now. So join me in connecting to the magic in you, the magic of women, and let's share just a little piece of how that magic can be activated today. Welcome, Sarah, to the magic stage, my friend. Here you are. Thank you for joining me here for this episode of You Are the Magic.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Always love being in your presence. So I so appreciate being invited to be here.
Yeah, you know what I'm loving, Sarah, is that we're actually having a conversation, which we do all the time,
Mhm.
but now other people can listen in on the gems that we discover because when we go into conversation, what I notice is that we help each other to see things that we're bringing forward, or maybe things that are in our blind spot, or we get these moments of like, oh, me too.
Mhm.
Find them to be really like nourishing, inspiring, and I always get a little bit of something that I need, or I get heard in a way. There's something that you can hear. So I just want to appreciate that about you. And I'm so pleased, everyone who's listening today, you get to be in on the conversation with me and Sarah. But we're going to begin in the way that we begin all episodes when we have a guest, which is, Sarah, please share with us the magic that you make and create and then share with the world.
Such a great question. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't back up a little bit and just share why I do that. And I think in general, we as entrepreneurs share or develop or create our magic because of things that we didn't have or because of our experiences. And so I think many people can relate to living a life that feels like you're just above water, feels like you are just getting by, feels like you're just reacting, just responding, just staying one step ahead, if at all one step ahead. And I lived that life for many, many years where I was just like just above, like bopping above the water, and really just like living in this grind of like trying to get ahead, trying to reach the top of that success pinnacle, really subscribing to the hustle and the grind culture and mentality. And it took a toll on me. And essentially, I had this big realization and this midlife awakening that I wasn't living a conscious, intentional, awakened life. And those are big words, but really what that means, the subtitle is like, I fucking, can I swear?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's be free. Let's be free in our storytelling and our magic. Yes.
I wasn't living the life of my design. I was living by someone else's standards, by someone else's definition of what success was. And quite frankly, Deb, like I didn't even know what I wanted because it was so loud and I was subscribing so intently to these external things. This is subscribing to society's definition of success and my company's definition of success. And so I was so busy listening to everything else that I really wasn't even knowing what the heck I wanted. And so the midlife awakening was sort of like really lifting my head from the sand and being like, WTF, like, where am I? And I didn't really know where I was, despite all the accolades, despite all the success, despite all the things I had. I was really lost. And I was not connected to myself at all. And when people talk about being disembodied, that was like another language to me. I didn't know what that meant. But really, that means like you're just not in your body. For those of you who are still like, what does that mean? And I wasn't in my body. And I realized that at close to 40 years old. And I've since done a lot of work on getting into my body, which, by the way, is a constant struggle and constant work. And so the work never ends. I like to say it gets a little easier, but certainly never ends until we transition over. And I love and my magic being the support I can give others to live their own intentional, conscious, awakened life of their design. And so you have full agency of your experience on this earthbound world. You get to decide the way you want to live it. And let's put some intention around that. So we're not transitioning over at the end of our lives going, wait, what did I do? For whom? And so that's really the magic is helping women step into that and reclaim that and really design a life that best serves them, that brings them the greatest amount of happiness and value and where they feel purpose from and fulfillment from. And that's what I just love doing in all the work, whether it's my coaching, my retreats, my community, my leadership development work in the corporate space. It's all rooted in the same thing.
Yeah, and often we are inspired to share the magic in the world that we needed, which is what you said. So I just want to I just want to kind of go a little bit deeper in flashback for us, Sarah, when you were disembodied. What did you notice? Like what's the moments when you were disembodied, when you weren't connected, when you weren't necessarily conscious, when you're making choices based on what your company or what conditioning, tells you, and that, that ball's been running down the road for a while. It's gathered some momentum. How did you start to notice maybe this isn't the way? And the reason I ask this is I imagine there's a lot of women who they're starting to get some intuitive hits. They're starting to get some information that maybe this isn't the way, or maybe there's another way. So for you, how did you know? Was there a big moment, or was there many small moments?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, because you're right. Like, people often ask, what was it? Because they want to be able to detect, like, is that my experience? And it is a real compounding. And I think that it's several different things that contributed to me picking my head out of the sand. And I think it was, a lot of it was like, I was starting to really consider bad choices that could really have major implications on my family, on my marriage, on my life. Like, I was sort of dancing with the devil, or getting too close to the end of the cliff, or whatever that saying is. Like, there were things that I was like, wait a minute, those aren't my values. And so I think it was like thoughts were coming into my head that were in direct contrast to really my values. And so, and truth be told, like, the world was so loud telling me my values were like money, power, influence. And then when you have those things, you sometimes operate in this world of like feeling untouchable, because
Mm.
people are telling you like, oh, you've got this and you've got that, and your company wants you to keep doing more of that, so they keep paying you, and you're like, I'm untouchable. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm about to maybe engage in behavior that could blow up my life.
Mm.
And I think it was me picking my head up and being like, wait a minute here. Like, what are my values? And so I think maybe for some people listening, like, are you being tempted to do something, or maybe you're being called to yeah, engage in some behavior that doesn't really feel aligned. Like, there was just something that was like, wait a minute here. And for me, it was major implications of like, blowing up my life, like really not good. But it could be, not as nature. And I think it's like, and also, I guess I should back up just a little bit more. I had started going to meditation, dipping my toe in, by the way, because I was certainly one of those people. I'm sure many of you might be able to relate, of like, I don't know how to meditate. I'm a bad meditator. I can't. It doesn't work for me. And I started to dipping my toe in, and started leaning in with curiosity versus judgment of like how bad
Mhm.
I was. And then the curiosity, it's amazing what happens when you lean into more curiosity. With more curiosity, it's like opens up so much more. And then I think I just was creating a little bit more awareness, like, ooh, this feels kind of good. This hit feels kind of good. And it just, I think, allowed me to take a minute and take stock of my life, of what was happening. And I think I was like, ooh, those choices seem a little not aligned. And so I think uh, I would say that I think it was like really just kind of like, ooh, wait a minute. Does this feel aligned with who you are and your true values? And I really uncovered through this, through lots of work subsequently, that like my values aren't power, money, and influence. Like, those aren't values that I hold close to my heart. But I did for lots of years. And it was through the like lifting up my head. It was through the questioning my behavior, or questioning the behavior I was considering, that I started re-evaluating, what are your values? What are you subscribing to? And are those really aligned with who you are as a person?
I want to highlight two key things that you said there that I think are universal. And the first being curiosity. Like, curiosity is the great activator, because when we're curious, we don't know. We don't
Mhm.
know what the answer is. So we're open to the possibility, which means we are naturally opening up to enter the potential of a new space or a new way of thinking or a new way of feeling. Whereas, like in the work that I do, one of the most dangerous things a person can say is, I know, because it's the great stop, dead end. It's like you were saying before about kind of becoming embodied. It's a forever learning, and we return to it. But the other thing that I want to highlight for everyone listening, and you said it more than once, is I felt this was not aligned. Not, I think this might be a wrong choice. I felt. And that's when we really can start to kind of make changes from the inside, when we connect to our feelings. Because so much of our conditioning is up in our mental space, in how we think. Whereas our intuition lives in your heart. It's going to come through feelings, sensations, instincts. And so you were starting to get these feelings of like, oh, not the right way.
Yeah, really great point. And I think, like, again, I did a really good job for lots of years not feeling, because I was just like, I was rocking and rolling and checking the boxes and hitting the goals and getting the money and getting the accolades and having the things that I was like, I'm too busy to feel. And it was really, I would say, an introduction to meditation. I started just being curious about these things. And I think it was because I was recognizing that despite having, quote unquote, all these things, I was really depleted. Like there wasn't a lot inside. I felt like I wasn't as abundant inside as I thought these things would bring me. And yeah, the feeling, I think, is a great point. It definitely, and the feelings is also an area. The embodiment is also, again, something that's a continued work in progress. And so, when people still say, where is that showing up in your body? For example, that's not easy for me to necessarily identify. It's sometimes hard for me to say, people that do this work and continue to really commit to it are really deeply connected to self, and they can really identify specifically within their body where it's showing up, and maybe there's a color associated with it, and that is not my experience yet. It's still like I'm just trying to where am I feeling it first? Am I feeling it? Right? Am I feeling it? You bring me in my body. And then just leaning into that with curiosity of like, okay, like just trying to learn more about what that feeling is telling me. And I also want to mention one other thing. I was getting sick a lot. And I think this is worth mentioning because things do show up in our bodies. And I'm a pretty healthy person, and I am very active. I move my body a lot, and I try to really subscribe to a good diet. And so I was getting sick. And it was like, what is going on here? It's like totally not typical for that to happen to me. And so that was also something that was like, ooh, that might be a pink flag, right? Like not direct glaring red flag, but it was something that like, ooh, gave me a little bit of a pause for greater introspection.
Yeah, I love this pink flag. I'm going to pick that up for a minute, because as you were talking, I was starting to feel into everyone listening, and what I wanted to invite is, how can you listen to yourself as Sarah and I are speaking, or as you have been listening to Sarah and what she shared already around, and I love this pink flag. Like, it may not be blaring there, but what are the pink flags? Like, what are your feelings telling you? How is your body feeling? Like, does it feel aligned or not? Like all of these curious questions that we can start to ask ourselves, because I am imagining that there's some people listening who they may not have come to the full realization of like, oh, I actually want to go a different way. So this conversation may be an awakener. I also want to make space for the people who maybe did make the choice that wasn't necessarily the best. Maybe they did blow up their life, because some people do that.
Yeah.
And that's not the end of your story. The stories are continually evolving, and at any moment you get to tap back into and say like, this is my story, this is my life, I get to make choices from here. Deb tells me I'm going to believe it. I am the freaking magic. And just realize, so no matter where you are, whether it's red flags, pink flags, or even the white flag of like, I surrender, like I surrender, I can't continue with this path anymore. So now let's go on a magical journey, Sarah, and imagine that all of the women are with us and everyone's decided, I'm going to consciously choose from this moment. And Deborah and Sarah are going to just help me with creating a little bit of scaffolding and igniting my curiosity around shifting gears or reigniting my consciously lived life. Because I know that you are passionate about that, sharing that with women. So let's play.
Love it.
So where do we begin, Sarah? So say this is the magical playground and everyone's in there, choose their own adventure. What would you say is a great first step for somebody who's wanting to like realign their life or check in or yes to, I'm going to take the time to find a new navigation point?
Yes. I love this because it's real actionable steps that you can implement like today in this moment. So, Deb, I think the first thing I say this over and over to my clients and when I speak is that the two things that stand in our way of personal and professional success is time and dreaming. So the first thing is that you actually have to carve out time. If you want to live differently, if you want to have a different experience, you've got to create a different behavior that's going to allow for that change. Well, if I don't give myself the time to reflect, to ask yourself some important questions, which we will get to, that that's never going to happen. And I think that we also should be mindful that we live in a productivity culture in society that like is very, very strong on the you should be doing at all times, right? And so this thought of like dreaming, Sarah, you're telling me to stop and dream. You're 100%. That's what I'm telling you to do. And well, that's not productive. That's a waste of time. I would argue it's the exact opposite of a waste of time. It is the best thing that you can do, especially when you're trying to get clarity. I mean, just think about when is the last time you actually were in silence? We get in the car, we turn our radio on, we go for a walk or a run, we've got our earbuds in, we're listening to a book, we're listening to a podcast, we're listening to music. When do we ever allow ourselves the time to just be in our own space? And I think too, a lot of people, I hear this often is that I'm afraid to be with my thoughts. I'm afraid to be in silence.
Where I'm go.
I
It's not easy for everybody.
on 100,
Not used to it.
100%. And what I would say is a couple things. You have full agency over your experience. You know best what you need. So don't ever doubt your intuition. Okay. So you can scrap everything that Deb and I say, or you might take a little bit of this and a little bite of that, whatever feels right for you. But one thing I would say is that you are not your thoughts, right? So if you're sitting in this space and you say, I'm afraid of what I'm going to think, I'm afraid of really seeing myself or really acknowledging X, Y, and Z. I want to first say, like, you are not your thoughts. You are a product of your conditioning. You're a product of your influences and your experiences and all of the things that have been done to you and around you. So that is first and foremost really important for you to know. And then secondly, if it's important and you feel like you want to sit in that silence and feel like you can benefit from it, start small. Start with 30 seconds. Be with someone that you trust. Have somebody with you. Have a trained professional, be it a coach, be it a therapist, right? Like if that's important to you, figure out how can I set myself up for the greatest success possible. And this isn't meant to do alone. You should absolutely bring someone along the journey with you. And so I think sometimes people say you should, you hear people say I meditate every day. Everyone should meditate every day. I don't believe that. I think you do you, and that what your quote unquote meditation might look like, and it works for you. You do you. And so that's what I said. Take a little bit of like, oh, I like what Sarah said about like slowly building up some sort of stillness practice where I can start with 30 seconds a day and then build up some safety around that. Oh, I like what she said about it's not my fault. Those aren't my thoughts, aren't me. And if I can separate the two and recognize too that all thoughts are just that thoughts, they're not you. And so, yeah, I would say like that would be the first step, Deb, is I think is like creating some space, whether it be in stillness, whether it be not, but just creating some intentional space that allows you to start doing the work.
And I want to value add here. I'm going to yes and I'm going to say, everybody decide now that this can be fun. Like, we have lost the fun button somewhere in this whole let's be productive and let's do this and let's make that and I'm going to be successful when. Like, I think it's one of the greatest tragedies that we get to a certain age and we are told or we decide that we're not allowed to play anymore. Whereas play is one of the greatest activators. And if you want to dream, you've got to be in open, fun play and curiosity. Because if you're going to dream from the place where the old world that you're wanting to dream yourself away from or through, then you're using that vibration, that thinking. And so I agree with you. Meditation is really tricky for some people. And so I say, maybe you don't sit and try and meditate for 10 minutes. What about doing some coloring in? What about doing some painting? What about, putting some music on and dancing? Like, whatever it is that's going to unlock and free you up and give you some time that you're doing this just for you and just because it's fun. Because also when I'm teaching people meditation or intuition or tapping into their magic, that's always what I say first, Sarah. So we're aligned there. It's like, you decide, I'm going to give this to myself and it's going to be fun. Like, I get to decide. It doesn't have to be another thing on the Monday to-do list. This week, I will make sure time in the calendar to dream. Sure, I get it that you might have to figure out what day you may want to, go into dreaming. I'm not saying don't put it in your calendar, but I'm saying it's like inviting a different kind of way to be with yourself is the first thing to kind of unlock, I also think.
100%. And I think it's like being gentle on yourself. If like I am a person that unless I have it in my calendar, it's just not going to happen. And it's not about rigidity perhaps it's not about rigidity, but more about like getting the things in I want to get in and making sure that they happen. Right. And so I would say, and I'm gentle on myself. If I wake up and I'm supposed to work out, let's say, for example, and I just am like, really didn't sleep well, then I give myself grace and I'm like, let me just figure it out, push it to another day, do it later in the day, whatever it might be. And then I would say to add, thank you for adding that, Deb. And I would say it really is about getting in flow. And for me, flow means I'm focused on the now, which is like intentionally the name of my company, because it's really about coming from a place of the present. And when you are in flow, whether it's dancing, whether it's painting, whether it's meditating, you are really consciously bringing yourself into the present. And when you're in the present, you release the past and release the future. And it really unlocks and allows for a lot of magic. And so I think that to me, you decide how you get in flow. What is your flow? And that's like really learning what people will say, like, people are like, I lose time when I fill in the blank. And sometimes people need to remember, Deb, because sometimes these are things that need to be resuscitated because they've been dormant for years. And it's really, I help folks and give them the tools. Let's resuscitate it. What is the thing that you lose time with?
Yeah. And there's the fun.
There's the fun.
There's the fun. I get to do that thing again. I'm allowed. I want to add here also like a great journaling prompt or even just reflective prompt that can help to unlock, which opens up to dreaming, is, if I was unafraid, I would. And it can be anything. It can be about like the empire you want to build in the world. It can be about where you want to travel, or it could just be about the day. It could just be about like, if I was unafraid, I would
Mm.
apply for that job that I feel scared about applying for, or I would call that person who I really want to have a lunch date with. You know, whatever it is, whatever that is on the other side of the I'm afraid. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it. It just means that you're opening up these windows of possibility of, I could. That's possible. I get to decide again. But the other thing that this prompt gives, if you do it for days and days and days in a row, with just simply asking yourself in the morning, if I was unafraid, I would. What you find after I say do it at least 7 days before you kind of reflect and look back, but you'll see patterns. You'll see your fear pattern. You'll see what's holding you back from just going, I'm going to have fun in, like, I'm going to design my life. I'm going to give myself dreaming space. You'll see what's actually holding you back, whether it's, you know, abundance and the fear of financial instability, or whether it's around expressing yourself, or whether it's like, am I enough to do this? Whatever it might be, you'll start to see it. And then when you're in a relationship with whatever's been holding you back, then again, you get to decide, does it get to still hold you back? Or are you going to make a different choice in the magical playground, which is where you get to design your amazing life?
And there's so much power. I love that prompt, Deb. And there's so much power in putting that out into the world, right? And I
Yeah.
feel that when you are in that flow, when we're present, it does allow you to actually claim that, to say that out loud. Because if you're not in the present, you're going to allow your past experiences to chime in on what that thing is that you're putting out into the world. Oh, are you crazy, Sarah? You think you're going to make that much money, or you think you're going to reach that level of success, or you're going to think you're going to call in X, Y, and Z, and or you're thinking about the future and allowing those to impact. If I wasn't afraid, whatever that is, and so getting in the flow allows you to really answer those questions without the annoying voices of the past and the future to chime in, because they will try to minimize that. They will try and have you play safe and small. And we don't want to be playing, well, I mean, safe to a certain responsible sense, but we don't want to be playing safe and small, right? We have one time around, on this life, theoretically, that like we want it to be amazing. I mean, I certainly do. And the people I work with
Yeah.
don't want to sacrifice this time on earth.
Yeah, and you get to redesign, you get to choose again. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter whether you're married or not married, children or not children, divorced or not. Like, all of the things that we can also construct, particularly as women, I think, around, this is where my life is now. This is the direction of my life because of these series of choices, I want to now take us to what I also think is a great scaffolding and support for this dreaming, this ability to be able to design your own life, and that is the support of other women. And this is something that you and I both do. We both work with women one-on-one. We also both have communities. We're both founders of communities where women are invited to come into community together. So before we get into that, just tell us about the network of women, the community, because there's going to be people listening that don't know your community. So just share a little bit of that so we can get the foundation for the next part of the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we are meant to do life together, right? We are human social beings, and there is power in being seen and heard. And it's really important. And it's really important to show up. And I know you and I both create these containers in judgment-free, safe spaces. And I was looking for a community like that in Manhattan, and I found a lot of professional organizations. I found some personal organizations that didn't really sort of hit the mark. And really, the Network of Women is a community that marries personal and professional and talks about the things that matter most, but aren't found in mainstream conversation. So they're all the things, right, that are top of mind, like relationships, menopause, hormones, sex, trauma, friendships, work, happiness, all of the things that we're thinking about and either Googling or talking to our therapist about, but not really having safe spaces to have the conversations in a really safe space, judgment-free space. And so the Network of Women is a global community. 75% of our programming is digitally designed intentionally because we have such a large, broad reach. We have weekly programming that is driven by the community. So we are engaging folks, asking them, what are you thinking about? What's keeping you up at night? What are you Googling or talking to your therapist about? What's heavy right now? Where could you use support? And women are saying here, or can we talk about this? Or can we bring in someone to talk about whatever? And so we look internally for experts. We want to highlight and give our members a stage whenever possible. So when someone comes to me and says, can we please talk about financial literacy? I feel like I'm 45 years old and I don't have my shit together as it relates to that. Can I need some help? And I don't want to feel judged, and I don't want to, and I gotcha. I gotcha. And then we'll look and, oh, Kathy's a financial planner and advisor. Let's have Kathy come in and talk about some things. And so, yeah, it's really a safe and judgment-free space. And I say to talk about the things that matter most. And like you, we don't have corporate sponsorships or corporate relationships intentionally because I don't want to censor any of the programming that we are talking about. So that is built with design. And there are certainly companies that come to me that want to create partnerships. And while it might be fiscally advantageous for me, it's not something I'm looking to do because it takes away the magic of the community, which is like, Deb, if you want to talk about X, Y, and Z, I don't want to say, that's really not a place to talk about. The now's not a place. No, no, no. The now is your place.
It is the place. Yeah. And we need these places. Like you, as shared, I also have the Big Life Magic Makers. And something that's beautiful about us, Sarah, is that we're in each other's community. I've been a Network of Women member since 2020 when we first connected. And so we share events, we do joint events, but something really powerful that changed the thinking game for me around my community is my community was developed in 2022 so that women could have a space to come and ask questions about their spiritual practice, develop their magical tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then what I've realized in the last few months is the magic is secondary. It's actually about the women creating space where women can come together in these safe places to tell stories, to ask the questions, to connect, to hear another woman's story so that you get that, oh, that's me too. I thought that was just me. So there's so much around breaking isolation, normalizing, allowing reflection in safe spaces. And this is what I always come back to. For generations and generations and centuries, women have gathered in circles. Like it is something that is not only great, it's also something that I believe we need.
Mm.
So for you, because you've had your community now for quite a few years, you've had so many different types of events, like my community, really diverse membership. What are you noticing in the women who engage in community? What unlocks or shifts? How do communities support women? Because if there's women on the outside who don't know, or sometimes people I think on the outside of a community can be like, is this for me? Am I allowed? Are these going to be my people? Like all of that can stop somebody from joining a community, whether it's the Big Life Magic Makers or the Network of Women or any other place where women gather in safe circles. What do you notice is unlocked?
My gosh, I feel there is so much, but I do think you can take a breath. Like, I think that there is so much expected of us from ourselves and from others that whenever people choose to show up, whether it's in person or online, you can actually physically see a difference from the way they showed up, which is like typically like everyone's frantic, like I just got off a call or da 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 da, and then the way they're leaving. And,
Mm.
you know, usually I know you do this oftentimes too, is like, how are we leaving? Like, what are we feeling? Is there a word that we're leaving with or what have you? And and it's so you see women just there's so much gratitude for all the things, right? Not feel like feeling part of something bigger, for not feeling like they're the only one. Uh,
Mm.
being seen and heard. I mean, how often are you in conversation with someone and they're looking over your shoulder or like looking around and you're like, I'm right here. It's me. And this conversation should be between you and I. And so when you show up to a place and our goal is to be connecting to each other, it creates just monumental shifts in people. And I think it allows them to go and do all the other things with like a support crew in their heart. And
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
like, I get off these calls and I'm like, "Oh, wow, I'm being lifted. There's other
Mhm.
women that are helping to support me." And whether or not they're, like, in you know, whether or not that's really, like, you know, someone's thinking, I'm supporting Sarah," or not, that's all of our intention, right? We're all just there to help support one another. So I think we all leave with that, like, "You can do it. Like, it's possible." And I feel like life is so hard alone. And when you're too busy, right? I hear this all the time, like, "Oh, I got this, da, 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 da." I'm like, "Oh, that seems hard. That seems hard." Like, it doesn't feel like you it's a lot. It doesn't feel like you have any time that you're just and I say, like, "So when are you taking care of you?" "Well, I get in bed and I read at night." And I'm not underestimating that. I do too. What a
Mm.
gift. What a gift. And I also am like, "Oh, and my women, when I get with them" and you know the magic that comes from it. There's
Yeah.
beautiful connection. There's, introductions. There's beautiful, resources shared. Like, there's just so much that can happen when you show up.
Yeah. Yes. I recently asked a few of my members to meet me for my curiosity around what's it like being in the Big Life Magic Makers.
Mm.
And this all came from this moment of just like, oh my gosh, it's about the women. Like, yes, we want to learn about how we can sync up with the moon, how we can work with oracle cards, how we can, sharpen our intuition, like all of that we still do. So I followed that curiosity and I met with some of the members and I asked all of the members exactly the same 4 questions. And all of the answers were as unique as the women, but there was these common threads. And one of them was, I now trust myself. Or said in a different way, I have confidence to actually go for the thing I really want to go for now. And like these things, I was like, you cannot buy that in a shop. You cannot put that on a credit card and say, this is what I need in my life that's going to really support me. And then one other member says to me, which I can still hear ringing in my ears, and she said, like we're all supporting each other and we're all connecting and we're all like figuring out what we need. And as a result, we all elevate. We all amplify.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, we do. And that's the feeling that you and I know in these community events. But it was so interesting to hear it back from members. Because, like in the beginning of the membership, I would have thought, oh, well, this is about, the reflection would be someone would say, oh, well, I know how to work with the moon now. My meditation's getting stronger. I feel connected to my intuition. That would have been my measure of success. And that still happens.
Mhm.
When I asked with simple curiosity, none of that was mentioned.
Mhm.
Trust, confidence, going after your dreams, amplifying, elevating self and others. These are the things that are happening in
Mm.
these communities. Again, because there is so much freaking magic when women connect in safe circles.
There's
Mm.
that is just, like, so powerful, and s what else what else more do you need, right? Like, I feel like it's so important, and to me, it's like, "Oh, how could you not have that in your life?" And I think you and I are just like, it's a non-negotiable, right? Like it is a non-negotiable that I am within community at the very least once a week. And oftentimes it's certainly more than once a week. But yeah, it's such a beautiful gift to yourself, but then what you're giving each other, it's amazing. And that doesn't surprise me that your members would say that. And yeah, that's something I learned too. Like they're coming because of that. And then the other stuff is important, but it's almost like that's secondary.
It
And
is secondary.
yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing about all of that is what I'm seeing, whether it's your community or my community, both, women are kind of reclaiming their agency.
Mm.
You know, like letting go of the things that I think I'm not allowed to say that, or am I the only person who feels this? Yeah, because this is also what I know about the world. Like we have created this world, and I'd say we've all created it.
Mhm.
We've all created this world where there are conditions on people, but particular conditions on women that keep us silenced or caged or telling us we're not allowed.
Yeah.
And I, like, one of my North Stars is I want to smash all of that out of the way so that there is a freedom to be able to make time for self, make choices around what it is that you want for women, to be able to speak freely, to feel safe. All of that, which is another reason why I think it's really powerful for women to come together, because it's really hard to unlock that alone because it's held in the vibration of the culture, the community, the country, the world. It's big energy.
That's suppression. Yeah, that's such an interesting point. Yeah, it's like working through that. It can yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah, because we have to unlock it in ourselves, and then we unlock it with groups of other women, and then we might unlock it in our family, our community, where we work. But that's all the unlocking. Like, because I think there's also something about being in places and spaces that unlock you are what's going to help you to unlock that dream.
Mm.
Actually, what do I want? Because, like, I know I've heard you say it before, Sarah, like sometimes you'll ask a woman, what do you want? And they don't know how to answer that question. You know, I also sometimes ask women, like, how's your heart? Like whether I'm doing the spiritual practice, energy guidance, or my grief transformation work, how's your heart? And so often women are like, I don't know. So like checking in with heart, checking in with dreams. Let's bring that back. Please.
And that all is, into the feeling, right? That's all coming into like pause. How are you? I haven't even checked in with myself today. Let me do a scan. Let me
Yeah.
see, how am I? Like, how am I feeling? And we know that a day, in a minute, in an hour, we feel every emotion possible, right? Because it's constantly shifting. And so how I'm feeling in this moment is different than how I feel this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so allowing yourself that space to really ask yourself, and again, like it's the societal message, it's the suppression, it's the doing and the productivity culture. It's that there's all these things that are working against us to say, no, don't stop. I mean, the consumerism, just buy. But like Deb said, I mean, there's literally, you cannot buy what's created in these circles. You
Yeah.
can't buy it.
You cannot go into the shop and put it on a credit card.
But they want us to believe that. So it's like no, go do that, and don't make the time for a circle necessarily. Like there's another solution to that. You just take out your credit card and you'll buy
Yeah.
it.
Take a pill, you'll be good. I want to go here now. You had the awakening of self, which was like, I don't think I'm actually making choices aligned with my values. And then since then, over the last handful of years, you have made changes, big, significant changes. Like, I would say you are, like, you've in so many ways had your phoenix moment more than once, of like, let that burn down. I'm going to rise up from that. Like, let me, you've continued to emerge.
Mm.
So tell us, where is that leading you? Like, what are you excited about? What's coming up? Like, what's on the horizon? Like, what's possible from this place when you put this time into connecting to self, making conscious choices, gathering with other women, backing yourself?
Well, the real question is, what isn't possible?
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
literally, I really feel that way. Like, today, I had a client, a coaching client, and she had an interview with a newspaper. And she, like, after the interview, it didn't go, like, she just didn't feel that they got that what she wanted to get across, whatever. It was like this, immediate, ugh, she felt deflated. And I said, but what if they got what they needed? What if that article is like, why don't we look at it from this lens versus like, they didn't get it. They didn't ask me the questions they wanted to ask. I don't think I got the information across what I wanted to. And I'm like, but what if you did? What if
Mm.
we just, our default was the good versus the bad? And
Yeah.
so I think, like, I am constantly, what I'm most excited about is like this constant evolution. Like, I left a job where I was making several $100,000 a year. I left a city where I had been living for 26 years to move to a place that's quiet and rural and peaceful, where I'm surrounded by nature, where I'm living a completely different life. And it's freaking amazing, right? Do you need to make those huge macro shifts like I do? No. Like I did? No. You could do whatever the shifts are for you. That just happened to be my experience. And I'm like, I'm continuing to shift. My kids are going to be out of high school in 4 years. Where's Sarah going to be then?
Yeah.
Probably not wintering in Vermont, freezing my tail off. I'm going to be in the Caribbean, likely hanging out with Deb. So, like,
Yes.
it's like, the possibilities are endless, and to me, it's so exciting. And so, but and I need to constantly do this work of being present, of
Mm.
creating the stillness, of reflecting and being conscious of what I want, because I don't wanna then find myself just, like, running to what I think I should be doing, or what just is a reactive next step. I want it to be really intentional. So with all that excitement of anything is really possible, which I really feel is, and let's make those moves intentionally. And so that's where I am. I'm like, now just living today, because I also don't wanna live 4 years down the road. I don't wanna think about, "Oh, my kids are graduated, where am I gonna go?"
Yeah.
All I know is that, who knows? But
Who
right
knows?
now, I wanna
Yeah.
continue to build my business. I wanna continue to impact and help as many women as I can, and then see where that takes me. See how that business we'll see what paths it takes me down. How does that change my business? What
Mm.
directions would I choose to go? Where might I not choose to go, right? Like, but
Yeah.
it's that reflection and constant just, awareness that is really important. And
Mm.
the and being with other women, and like Deb and I, as she said at the beginning, we're constantly audio texting each other, calling each other, like, "What do you think about this?" Or, "I was thinking about doing this," or that's important too, like making sure you've got your people to be
Yeah.
able to springboard ideas off, and that. So yeah, I'm excited by life, Deb, because I'm living it. And I didn't live it for a lot of years. And the fact that I'm like
Mm.
moving and here and don't have 10 tabs open and jumping through other things and sending an email while we're talking, that's not the old Sarah. I mean, that was the old Sarah. The new Sarah is like, I'm here. I'm with you. We're together.
Yeah. And again, coming back to, you're in the now.
Right.
You're in this intentionally. I'm going to be in this now. And this is also what I call in my work, making space for magic. Because when we go into the overdrive, when we think it's all what we have to do, that we have to keep grinding and working for it, we're not making any space for the universe to have their say, to, like, to move the ball along to a different part of the playground. Like, it's actually not co-creation.
Mm.
It's just doing. And it eventually gets really hard, and it'll you'll get these little moments where you're like, I don't know, this is the way I want to go.
That was another one of the compounding was like, does this have to be that hard? That was another one of the things. Like I asked myself, one of those things, is
Mhm.
this hard? Does it have to be? And it was this hard because it was a lot of forcing and it was a lot of doing. And I wasn't being. And when you're being,
Yeah.
it releases the forcing. And so again, like if you talked to Sarah 5 years ago, I'd be like, I don't know the language you're talking. So forgive me if you're, on your own journey and not there and not understanding or not fully grasping this like being versus doing. But I think if you're listening, you're leaning into it. And that's a beautiful place to be from
Yeah.
that place of leaning in and just learning and being curious.
And I want to say this, if you are listening and you're leaning in and you're being curious, reach out to me, reach out to Sarah. You are welcome to come to an event at our communities. Just to
100.
follow curiosity. Like, because no one's meant to do it on their own. You're not supposed to have all the answers to unlock everything. Absolutely not. But it does start with your decision of just like, I'm going to be curious, or I'm going to give this a go. Like you were like, I'm going to try meditation. It's like there's a step, and that first step always comes from you, which is what I love because it means you have agency.
Mhm.
You're making the choices, you're intentionally choosing. So, Sarah, if people do want to stay connected with you or learn more about you and your work, how can they do that?
Yes, they can follow us. The easiest way is just to go on the old social media. We're at the Now LLC is our Instagram handle. So you can find us there where we have a lot of information about upcoming events and also our website, which is the Now NYC. We have upcoming events and we have listed community events, free community events, which there are a number for you to kind of dip your toe in to see what is this all about. And then you'll be able to get a sense of the member only events to see what kind of other things are these women doing together. So those are probably, and then you can always reach out to me directly at sarah@thenownyc.com if you feel so inclined. I would love to.
Yes, please. All of those links, my friends, are going to be in the show notes. I also just want to say Sarah's got a podcast where she interviews amazing women. Just share a little bit about that. I think
Oh,
it can also be a great unlock. Listening to other women's stories, I think, is a great way to unlock your own story.
yeah, very much aligned with this one. It's called Below the Surface at the Now. And it is really about our origin story. There's only one consistent question I ask all of my guests, which is when you think of your earliest experiences, environments, people, things that have contributed to who you are and the paths that you've taken in life, where do you go? And it's a beautiful question to allow women to reflect on, oh, what has made me? And then not only what's made me, but what maybe am I carrying that I no longer need to, right? What conditioning can I release maybe? And so, Deb, your episode is amazing. And maybe you'll drop that in the show notes too, because that was such a beautiful episode. As
Mm. I actually re-listened to that recently because in that episode, Sarah, we were talking about unsilencing. I was talking about how my intuition was silenced when I was really young, growing up in a Catholic family, and then me reclaiming that. And I've been doing a lot of my own personal work and research into what's going to support women to be able to move into living a beautifully intuitively led life. And that was one of my resources. I was
Mm,
like, listen to what I was saying 2 years ago.
I love that episode with all your siblings. And yeah, that was such a cool episode.
Yeah, so many cool episodes. Sarah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Every episode of You Are the Magic is dedicated. And we do this because I believe dedication is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful ritual to bring into people's lives. And so, Sarah, as the guest, you get to dedicate this episode of You Are the Magic. Who would you like to dedicate this episode to?
Thank you. Well, thank you a million times over for having me. It's been such an honor and such a gift to spend this time with you. And I'd like to dedicate this episode to a friend who I recently lost last week. Um, Emily Cayley is her name. And she was battling cancer for years and sadly lost that battle last week, excuse me. And I just think she's her soul will always be remembered as such a beautiful being who just cared so much about others. And up until, our last text exchange was asking about my daughters and our summer and just how happy she was that we were thriving in Vermont. And it just was such a testament to her heart and how beautiful and amazing of a person she is. So I just am grateful to her for her friendship for all these years. And I would love to dedicate this to her in her honor.
Mm. Blessings, 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 blessings. And everyone, as you anchor that blessing and that dedication in, like, who has inspired your world in that way? They may still be here. They may be somebody who has passed. But I'm sure that you can find your own connection and send that dedication to that person now, because we all have such beautiful influences on each other. Thank you, Sarah, and blessings.
Thank you, my friend.
For her journey going forward. All right, my dear friends, if you are still with us here, you know what it is. It's your invitation. Choose your own adventure. What do you want to do now? What's your intention now? What's aligning with your values now? And if you are inspired to, please connect with Sarah or myself, because you are welcome to come and join a community event. If you think hanging out with a group of women could be a good thing for me, then you are welcome. We invite you to do that. But let's all take a big, deep breath in now together and affirm it, because it is true. In this moment, in the now, this is true. Big, deep breath in. It's you, my friend. You are the magic. Thank you for sharing your time and your magic with me in the latest episode of You Are the Magic. I invite you now to stay connected to that magic within you. You may choose to connect via a tune. It's a 5-day audio activation that's going to connect you to your intuition and then turn the volume of that inner guidance system up. You may also choose to become a member of the Big Life Magic Makers. It's our virtual community for women who are saying, yeah, I'm freaking magical, and I want to be hanging out with some soul sisters who not only believe in their magic, but are supporting each other to activate it. There's so many ways you can support your magic today with your intuition, through community, by connecting to me, and I invite you to choose you and your magic now. If this episode or any of these episodes have supported you in any way, I would love your support by sharing a review on the platform that you are listening or watching on. It really helps me to get this podcast into more ears and more hearts, so we can claim it as women. We are freaking magical, and we are going to activate our magic to create the changes in the world that are moving us towards more love, abundance, prosperity, and joy. Breathe it in, believe it to be true. And to you, my friend, you are the magic.